The rural way of life is about making everyone feel at home. Tractor Supply chose advanced 5G solutions from T-Mobile for Business to transform intelligent customer service. Together, we put the power of AI to work across 2,200 stores, keeping things running seamlessly inside, curbside, and countryside. This is elevated customer experience. This is Tractor Supply with T-Mobile for Business. Take your business further at T-Mobile.com/now.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back to the Mixed Doubles Podcast. We're your hosts, Maggie Robinson
and Josh Smith-McCauley.
We're former D1 athletes and now former coworkers at a major professional sports league with a passion for all things women's sports. If you're interested in more content, please follow us on Instagram at Mixed Doubles Pod. That is 1D, the Mix and the Double. Share it. And Josh, take it away.
All opinions stated are our own and have no affiliation with our companies whatsoever.
And even though I'm not employed, that still stands true. Okay. It has been a minute, but today we are bringing you another interview with Vanessa Fuchs. Vanessa is the CEO of WeCoach, a nonprofit that's dedicated to recruiting, advancing, and retaining women's coaches in sports at all levels through professional growth and leadership development programs. Before WeCoach, she was the Senior Associate Athletics Director and Senior Women Administrator at her alma mater, Florida State University, where she was the first woman ever to lead the Seminoles Athletic Department. As a former basketball player and track and field athlete at FSU, Vanessa has committed her career to uplifting coaches and student athletes. And to speak for myself and Josh, as recent college athletes, we know the impact coaches have on student athlete mental and physical well-being. And we're so excited to highlight all the amazing work that Vanessa has been doing. Welcome, Vanessa.
Wow. Thank you so much for that kind intro. And I need to thank you both. Thank you for leading this podcast and creating more awareness for women in sport. It's obviously a really special movement occurring, and just really admire the work that you're doing through the Mixed Doubles Podcast. And Josh, thank you for being one of our champions. I'm excited for the conversation.
Absolutely. Look, we'll start off. I think if you've listened to the podcast before, you know how much I love the WNBA and basketball. And so I was really excited that you played college basketball and that we get to have you on, one of the many things that you've done. So I just wanted to start from that beginning, right? In college, being an athlete, being a basketball player. We also found out that you did a little bit of track and field too, which is just insane. You're a dual sport athlete. But can you just talk about that experience kind of as, the thing that started all of this for you and just what it was like being a dual sport and balancing kind of that workload?
Yeah, thank you for asking. It means a lot that I had the opportunity to attend Florida State and then the opportunity to come back and work and impact the coaches and student athletes during my time there. From the very beginning as a young child, I always wanted to go to FSU. And so it was a dream come true to have the opportunity. And as I was being recruited, I actually was being recruited more for track and field than I was for basketball. It's probably my better sport. I was a thrower on the track and field side, but FSU gave me the unbelievable opportunity to do both. And so I couldn't pass that up. And so I came to FSU on a basketball scholarship. And in the spring, after the basketball season, I was able to compete for the track and field team. That did last just 1 year. I got an ankle injury my sophomore year during the basketball season. I had to have some surgery. And so I kind of hung up the track shoes after that. But unbelievable experience in Tallahassee at Florida State, and really a lot of the experiences, the learnings, the skills that you develop. And you both know this as former collegiate student athletes. It stays with you for a lifetime. So many of those skills and characteristics that you learn are transferable to any career that you want to pursue. And so I was really, really grateful and just rave about, if you can't tell already, my time as a Knoll. And then, yes, having the opportunity to come back and serve in administration was also an unbelievable opportunity. I know we'll have a chance to talk about that.
Getting to see not just yourself, but people that have kind of gone through their university, not only go to their dream school, but then come out of it and go back and serve in any capacity. We had some people on our last podcast who were doing a similar thing with Columbia University. And so it's really special to get to see how you kind of learn from your institution and go back and then serve your institution for student athletes, for the general student body. And I love it. One thing I left out, though, is that we have not maybe we, but a similar connection. When we were doing some digging, you went to Cardinal Gibbons High School, right? Yeah. One of my best friends and roommate in college of 2 years went to Cardinal Gibbons. So I have, funny enough, some random Cardinal Gibbons football gear hanging around. So
yeah.
Shout out.
Oh,
shout
wow.
out to them.
How about that? Yeah, I was born and raised in South Florida. And so I had the opportunity to attend Carleton Gibbons High School before making the move to FSU after graduating, and just really grateful for those opportunities.
And then obviously too, you're a student athlete in school. You did a fantastic job of both parts, but wanted to shout out the student part as well, graduating magna cum laude. I guess you touched on it a little bit, but if you could just give some of our listeners, what are some of those tangible skills that you feel like when you're an athlete and a student and balancing the two things and coming out of school, those skills that you can then translate to whatever it is that you kind of pursue in your career? Like, what would be the standout things for you that you really leaned on when you were in school?
Yeah, I really credit our head coach at Florida State, Sue Semrau, with how she led and how she treated us as her student athletes. She said, I'm going to treat you as a person first, a student second, and an athlete third. And throughout my 4 years, she lived true to that. And I'll never forget it. Some of the best advice I ever received in my life, it was from Coach Sue. I sat down with her after my freshman year. And like a lot of freshmen, I didn't play a lot my first year. I was much more of a role player. I was disappointed, thought I needed more playing time. Floated the idea that maybe I was thinking about transferring. And this is back in the late 90s. I know the transfer portal has really ramped up since that time. But, Sue gave me the best advice, and it's so memorable. She said, V, you've got to get outside yourself and find the little things, the small things that allow you to make yourself an asset for this team. And she encouraged me. She said, do the best you can with your schoolwork, get out and serve the community, be the best teammate that you can be. And all of those things, the playing time and the results will take care of itself. But she basically said, do the little things that make you an asset. And my senior year, I was rewarded because my teammates voted me as one of the co-captains. And I'll tell you, I was all-time best bench warmer at FSU. I didn't even play on senior night, y'all, but it was doing those little things that allowed me to stand out. I was leading team workouts in the summers. Back then you couldn't work out with your coaches in the summer. It's changed now. And I think all those little things that Sue was encouraging me to hone in on and really be a leader for our team in doing, ultimately, I think resulted in the opportunity to lead as co-captain my senior year. And I've carried that advice with me throughout my career. Every step of the way, I can point to moments where I was trying to do the little things that made me an asset to the organization that I was working for. And I credit my college coach for that.
That's such good advice. And I also just want to say, I feel a parallel to you as well. I was also I joke, I was left bench, first team all bench warmer for sure. But it is those little things. And I feel like it's more about the skills that you learn. And then also how you're showing up for yourself and for other people. What energy are you bringing? What's your attitude like? Are you excited to be there? Because that's so, people pick up on it, and it
for sure,
you can feel it. You know what I'm saying? And so I think figuring that out, and then also just learning that those skills are still so important in the workplace. This was something that kind of blew my mind. Not that I thought, soccer is just its own thing. I'll use those skills only on the soccer field, but they're so transferable to every part of life. And I think that's the thing I'm realizing that I'm the most grateful for sports about is all the life lessons that you just kind of carry with you that you weren't even aware that you picked up on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's not just a team concept, but it's really not about you, right? As you're trying to work toward the common goal of a team. And the same is in the workplace, no matter what career you're pursuing. And so those abilities to work with others, be coachable, be a great teammate, develop authentic relationships, all of those things have carried with me for a lifetime.
Yeah, absolutely. Was there any specific moment that you picked up on in college that pushed you towards the athletic administration side? Was there any experience you had, a person you met, someone you talked to that kind of showed you that side of the sports world?
Yes. I've always been drawn to positions that maybe I'm not already at the time seeing a lot of women doing. And so at the time, again, this is the late 90s when I was in college, and I was thinking about, okay, what degree am I going to pursue? And I landed on digital media and communications. And I thought I was going to go into sports broadcasting and be on the sidelines, calling games. And there weren't a lot of women doing that in the late 90s. Now I love seeing so many women that have really elevated to the highest levels of sport that you see on television and calling these games. It's phenomenal. But at the time, that really wasn't the case. And I was drawn to maybe going into pursuing a career like that. So that led me. So in addition to that, I also had thoughts of maybe getting into coaching. And unfortunately, one of the graduate assistantship positions that I was going to take after my senior year, I was going to stay at FSU and be a GA, and the funding for it was cut. And it turned out to be the biggest blessing, because I then talked with our student athlete development department, and they said, well, the ACC's got this awesome futures internship and you should consider applying. And there's some roles where they'll send you out to their TV partners. You can work in their conference office. There's a number of different intern positions through this futures internship with the Atlantic Coast Conference. So I applied, I got an interview, and I'm thinking I'm surely going to get placed at one of the television partners, Comcast Cable, Raycom, Disney Wide World of Sports. I was selected for the ACC Championships internship, planning all of the championships for the ACC, which totally cool gig. And so moved to Greensboro and worked for about a year and a half with the ACC through that internship. And that started to kind of change my career trajectory a little bit, rethinking, okay, maybe it's not sports broadcasting, maybe it's not coaching. Let's give this college athletics administration a whirl. My boss at the ACC then connected me, and she's a graduate of the UNC Sport Administration program. And so I then moved up to Chapel Hill the next year. And from my time as an ACC intern, I landed my second internship at the NCAA before getting hired on full-time there. And so just, I think sometimes we put a lot of pressure on ourselves as young leaders, thinking we've got to have it all figured out by the time we're 20-something and in college. And I tell people all the time, I'm 46 and I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up. But if you can just see the opportunity within the opportunity and see how that opportunity might get you to the next step of where you're trying to go, you're not always going to have the exact position that you're looking for. But if you can see the opportunity within the opportunity and it feels like it's a good fit for you and your strengths, go for it. And so that's kind of a little bit about what I was thinking when I was in college. And then what I'm doing now is probably a little ways away from what I first envisioned for my career.
Yeah, it's so cliche. I hate even saying this, but the rejection is redirection. That saying is so true.
Good. Yes.
It's so true. Because I've
never heard that.
You're kidding.
Honestly, I've not heard that either. So
I'm glad I'm imparting wisdom.
That was great.
I'm going to borrow that, Maggie.
Rejection is redirection. Because there's so many doors behind that one that shut that you weren't even aware were there in the first place. And so I don't know. I think that's phenomenal advice, because there is so much pressure, I think, for all of us, especially when you're a student athlete and you're really high achieving and type A, to have it all figured out and to be doing the thing. And am I going to let people down? Take a breath. Like, clearly you got on the right path and it's served you so well. And you've built your way up from where you started at the ACC. What was it like coming back to FSU, your alma mater, and then becoming the first female to lead the athletics department? What was that like? How much did that mean to you as a grad?
Yeah. I thought once I landed at the NCAA, I thought I was going to be an NCAA national office lifer or work in a conference office. I started to catch a vision that maybe I wanted to be a collegiate commissioner, because again, there weren't a lot of women. Yeah. This is early 2000s. There weren't a lot of women as commissioners. And I thought, I loved my time at the ACC and I loved my time at the NCAA. So I thought one of those two, that's where I'm going to land and that's where I'm going to stay. And then FSU came calling. And I'm like, well, this is my alma mater. And I've always wanted or thought about maybe going back one day. And believe it or not, I told them no the first time when they called.
Wow.
To ask me to consider an associate AD for compliance position. And you know what it was? I was scared. I had never run a compliance department on a campus. FSU was just coming out of a major infraction. They were going to be on probation for the next 4 years. And I got scared. And I thought, too big of a job for me right now. Thankfully, they called a second time and said, you sure about that? You sure you don't want to just come down and check it out, take an interview? I'm so grateful I did. And then a year after being at FSU, I was elevated into the senior associate role, now working with sports and other departments that I had oversight of. And then a year after that, we had an AD transition, and President Eric Barron calls me and asks me to be the interim AD, which, I was 34 years old.
Wow.
There's the president of Florida State University calling and saying, we're going to entrust the entire athletics department to you. And what was most powerful about that call, and I'm forever grateful to President Barron for this opportunity. It was 3 months, but it was a powerful 3 months of my career. And I asked him, I said, well, what decisions am I going to be allowed to make during this time? And he said, any decision that any other athletics director in that role would have. And if you need my help, just ask.
Wow.
That having the president empower me, even as an interim, the confidence that he showed in me, I'll never forget it. And then we went on, and it was a great 3 months. It was a short 3 months. It was a fast 3 months, but we were redoing basketball coaching contracts for our head men's and women's basketball coaches. We redid a 10-year Nike deal during that time. And not that I did that alone. The first thing I did, I was actually in Indianapolis when I got the call from President Barron, had to fly back, and I gathered our senior staff into our meeting room, and I said to them, I'm going to need each and every one of you during this time. And there's something neat. When I was at FSU, here's Sue again, she led a pregame talk where she told us about, when we interlock fingers and hold hands with another person, like as teammates, right? You stand and maybe hold hands for the anthem. She said, think of it this way. Your knuckles are kind of the vulnerable part. Your fingers are the strong part, and your strengths are covering your weaknesses. And that's where I kind of said to our senior staff at the time, I learned something from Sue, all those years ago, and I'm really going to lean on each and every one of you, and your strengths are going to cover my weaknesses during this time. And it was just an awesome opportunity. And then we were fortunate. We had an outstanding leader come in, Stan Wilcox from Duke University, took over as our athletic director at FSU, and had a great several years working with Stan before he left for the NCAA. He's still at the NCAA now, but you never know. And I always think about, had I said no and I'd stayed at the NCAA, would all of these things that I just could not have even imagined happened? And yeah, just forever grateful.
Having that empowerment from someone of that seniority and that power is so impactful. I'm sure that I felt it. I genuinely felt it when you were saying that. I was like, wow, that is something you never forget. That is a feeling that sticks with you.
Yeah. And just think about how much that builds up, especially someone like me. I remember driving into the parking lot on day one, now that I'm the interim AD, and looking at Doak Campbell Stadium and saying, oh boy, all of this is now in my hands. And it's a little overwhelming at 34 years young. But I knew we had such a great team. I knew I had President Barron's support propelling me forward. And so we made the best of that 3 months while they conducted a search. And it was really impactful time of my career.
Gosh, I love that. I love that so much, because also just hearing your story from earlier, and then now you kind of flash forward from just the leadership experience that you had as an athlete and the work that you did there, and, just continuing to build those blocks and learn and grow and take risks and go and work in Greensboro, and then, go to Indiana and Indianapolis, and then back to Tallahassee. Like, there's so much traveling and moving around in college athletics, and it's worth it for sure, especially you get those opportunities. So I love hearing stuff like that, especially for you in your position. And, I won't bury the lead, but like, one of my dreams is being an athletic director. And I've told a lot of people that. Like, absolutely love to. And so I think selfishly would just love to kind of understand from you, college athletics and professional athletics are a little bit different, obviously changing right now. But for college athletics and being an athletics administrator, what are kind of the intangibles there that you think are necessary? Obviously, teamwork seems like a big one, but just from you, what really helped you while you were there?
Yeah, a lot of it stems back to our playing days, right, as student athletes, and being able to have, be very goal-oriented, big vision, leadership, being able to rally your team around the cause and what you're trying to achieve. As an athletics director specifically, right now, I think you'll hear often you need a little bit of experience under your belt with the 3 Fs, football, facilities, and fundraising. And it sounds like, Josh, you're well on your way with some of those things, but there isn't one specific career path that lands you in that chair. But I will tell you, if you have aspirations of that, we need really strong leadership right now, because especially at the collegiate level, it's getting more and more challenging across every division, every level of college athletics. But certainly NCAA Division I is facing some major challenges. And so we need some great leadership at the top. So if that's an aspiration for yours, I'd say go for it. And you will serve yourself well the more people you tell that that's a goal. I think sometimes we tend to hold ourselves back by not sharing with others what we aspire to do. And so the more people that you tell, that also, it's amazing how you almost speak it into existence by telling those in your network that you think might be able to continue to advocate and propel you forward. The one learning moment I will say that I had no idea until I was actually in that interim chair is how much is coming at the athletics director every day. I gained a greater appreciation for suddenly, here prior to that, I had some departments, some sports that were reporting to me. Now, suddenly the entire department is reporting to you. The entire fundraising unit, Seminole Boosters, is reaching out and asking for not only your help, but then some of your time to go out and speak and be a part of the donor activities. You've got campus coming to you. And then I had no idea just the general fan base, how often I would hear from them telling me all of their amazing ideas for how we needed to run the athletics department. Had no appreciation for that in all my years until I was actually in that chair. And then it made me a better number two and a better executive staff member, because I then thought twice, should I send this to Stan? No, maybe I can figure this one out on my own, and maybe I leave him out of this one, or I just give him an update on the back end. It really forced me to think a little bit more about what I had to get him involved with, because I had a full appreciation. It was just unbelievable, nonstop, your schedule down to every minute of every day, and then into the evenings and weekends. And it's a lot of fun, but boy, if you don't have a good team around you, it becomes difficult. And so that was something I did learn, is just to have a greater appreciation and understanding. And then also to have a little more confidence in myself to take care of some things that maybe didn't have to land on his desk. So all around, just an awesome experience. But I would encourage you to go for it, my friend, if that's something you aspire for.
Yeah, no, if you're saying it, I'll do it. Twist my arm. No, but seriously, thank you. And I'm sure too, I mean, schools like FSU, I'm from Austin, so UT, these massive schools with massive athletics departments, and like you said, fans that very much care about their success across all their sports. I'm sure you have some stories there, whether they're funny or whatever. I don't know if you're willing to share one, if you have something that just like stands out as, oh wow, you like can't believe this happened.
Ooh, I'll tell you this, during my time, we started a project with Nike to redesign the FSU Seminole Head logo. And it hadn't been changed in 34 years. And there were just minor changes that we did with Nike to maybe modernize the logo a little bit. And I did not anticipate the number of people who, for not just a week or a month or a year after this change, would email us with their displeasure about the logo change. Years after. And here's what we did. We changed up the feather. We were having trouble embroidering the logo as it was originally drafted. So we were trying to modernize it, streamline it a little bit. So we changed the feather on the Seminole head, and we gave the Seminole teeth, because Florida State has a very good relationship with the Seminole tribe. And they said, can you give us some teeth? We do have teeth. And you would think we discontinued the entire athletics department with how many emails we received from upset fans changing the logo. It didn't help that the new logo got leaked in a Walmart store before the official launch. So it got out there before we were even able to communicate it ourselves to the fans. So then we had that little minor snafu that we were troubleshooting how to rein that in. But that's one example. But I can also share with you my favorite fundraising example.
Oh yeah.
You never know. You never know who you're going to come across in the world of sport, right? So we're out at the Beach Volleyball National Championships in Gulf Shores, Alabama. And it's held at the Hangout, and it's a really cool restaurant in Gulf Shores, Alabama. And I met the owner, and he owns some surf shops in Gulf Shores. He owns several restaurants. He also is the founder of the Hangout Music Fest in Gulf Shores. So if you're music junkies, it's very fun.
Yeah.
Music fest on the beach. So the owner, we're at dinner with Stan and our head coach one night at one of his restaurants, and he comes over to our table. So we just asked him a little bit about the Hangout Music Fest. And then he said, well, I'm in the process, because it's shortly after the beach championship that they host this in May. He says, well, I'm in the process of ordering and developing a plan to plant like 350 palm trees on the beaches of Gulf Shores to provide the Music Fest attendees some shade on the beach. And I said, Shaul, what are you going to do with those palm trees after the Music Fest finishes up? And he said, oh, every year we donate them back to the city of Gulf Shores so they can replant them around the city. Well, here I'm thinking in the back of my mind, we had just built our beach facility at FSU, and I'm thinking, I knew Coach was asking for shade structures and palm trees because that goes hand in hand with beach volleyball. I said, you want to send some of those to Tallahassee, Florida? And no kidding, he ordered a truck, put 50 palm trees on the truck, and had the truck drive 3.5 hours to Tallahassee to drop them off. And we had so many palm trees, we were able to plant them at the beach facility, but then we gave the rest of them to campus to use around campus. And in total, that was like a $50-something thousand donation from, you know,
oh my gosh,
this contact that I met at the NCAA Beach Volleyball Championship. You just never know. And you also have to be prepared to ask when the opportunity presents itself.
That's incredible. A truckload of palm trees is not where I thought that was going. That is so great.
No. Are they still up there? Is it still kind of that facade? Yeah, I'm gonna have to go visit. One of my good friends' little sister is on the beach volleyball team at FSU right now. So,
amazing! I was fortunate to have a role in hiring our head coach, and she's phenomenal, Brooke Niles, and she's done a great job. They just played in the national championships that were back in Gulf Shores this year over the weekend. So it's kind of timely that I'm sharing my palm tree story. But you just never know. I should have, in hindsight, asked him not only for the palm trees, but for a couple comp tickets to the Hangout Music Fest, because I do.
That would have been nice.
Yeah,
that would have been nice. I was going to say, I'm sure you could still reach out and you might hook it up. But yeah, we want to get to WeCoach soon. So I think this last question kind of involving your college athletics experience, just looking at where college athletics is going now, having the experience you've had, is there anything that you kind of see right now or can think of as far as personally where you think college athletics is headed? It's a loaded question, so take it as you will.
Sure.
Just having the experience you have.
I know we'd need a whole podcast episode just to talk about this topic, but I'll try to summarize quickly. You know, I was a part of college athletics during the time of when fruits, nuts, and bagels, I don't even know if you all understand what that means, but at the time you could only feed athletes fruits, nuts, and bagels. And everyone thought the world was coming to an end when the NCAA changed the rules that you could feed the athletes whatever was of nutritional value to them. And there were no more restrictions on what we could feed our athletes. And then it went on to multi-year scholarships. And then there were some changes around when you could and couldn't cancel scholarships for athletes, not being able to cancel for athletic reasons. Then it went on to transfer rule changes, and intra-conference transfer rules were deregulated. And then the transfer rule itself, the one-time transfer rule, was deregulated. Then we got into cost of attendance scholarships and paying them more for their cost of attendance above and beyond just the tuition fees, room, board, and books. And then as I was just leaving Florida State, NIL comes down the pipe. And I love the opportunities that NIL is offering for athletes to make an earnest living as collegiate student athletes based on their name, image, and likeness. But I only share all those changes because at each one of those, we had freak out moments. Oh gosh, college sports is coming to an end, and oh, this is going to be horrible for college sports. And there were some heartache. There were some road bumps that we had to kind of navigate and challenges, but at the end of the day, we really don't hear people talking about any of those changes anymore. And now NIL is the topic of the day. And so I'm trying to stay very positive and remind myself that there have been other big changes. And now the revenue share coming in play this upcoming year is another one. The thing I'll say about revenue share, and I love that we're now compensating student athletes. At my core, I always had a hard time with the amount of the revenue, and particularly where these skyrocketing salaries, particularly on the coaching side, were getting out of hand, still are getting out of hand. But with revenue share, where I'm a bit concerned is I'm worried we're instituting new rules that are going to set women in sport back when we've made so much progress moving forward. And hearing that right now, as it's written, there's talk of just sharing that revenue with football, men's basketball, and women's basketball. And that's a disproportionate of male athletes receiving that benefit compared to the number of female athletes that would. And we're still, as women in sport, overcoming over a century of history where those that kind of founded collegiate sports, the priority was, well, we're going to do this for the men. We're going to select certain men's sports to sell tickets, build massive venues, market it on radio, television, and give really strong marketing efforts and budgets and invest in scholarships. And all these things were developed over a century ago, right? All these decisions. And had women even been a part of the conversation over a century ago, surely we would be in a much better position now in terms of being revenue producing and maybe more the investment that's being made. And so to now in 2025, institute a revenue sharing plan where we're from the outset putting women in sport and other Olympic sports at a disadvantage, that they're not going to be prioritized for that funding, is disappointing. It's really not this current generation of student athletes participating. It's not their fault that the leadership in athletics over a century ago made some of the decisions that they did that have now led us to this place where, but it's the easy excuse. Oh, well, they don't produce revenue, so why are we going to share the revenue with them? Well, it's not their fault they don't produce revenue. It's the system. So anywho, I don't know if I was brief enough on that, but I'm excited for what's to come. I know there are going to be some challenges, but I do hope that leadership makes the right decisions to allocate that revenue share in accordance with some Title IX regulations.
Yeah. Such a chicken or the egg kind of question too. You know, like you have to start putting more money on women's sports, but where are you getting that money from in the first place? But if you don't give it to them, then no one's going to watch. No one's aware. There's no marketing money. There's, it's such a cycle.
Yes.
But yeah, fingers crossed.
Well said.
It's an interesting time for college sports. I feel like I'm just kind of like buckling in and like sitting back watching it all kind of happen. I'm like, I'm glad I'm not in there right now. Y'all got it.
Yeah.
That's partly why I pivoted out in 2022, because I saw all this coming.
That's been the funny part, is when I do tell people, they're always just like, why? And I'm like, yeah, I want to get into college sports right now. And everyone's like, why? Why would you do that? Seems exciting.
They want a challenge.
Yeah.
That kind of pivots us well into WeCoach, which is the reason you're here. Would you mind, I know we explained it at the top, but just kind of hitting us with the quick facts. What is WeCoach? What is the mission of your organization? Kind of what's the history? That's kind of a 3-in-1, but just a little bit of background on your organization.
Sure. And thanks for asking. It's been the honor of my life to lead this organization and make the impact that we're making. And we're the largest now. We've grown into becoming the largest nonprofit supporting women coaches across all sports, all levels of sport. And we currently serve over 18,000 women coaches across 50-something different sports that are represented in our community, and every level from youth club, middle and high school on up through college, pro, national. And so really, really proud of the growth that we've had, but we're on a mission. We know that the data tells us at every level of sport, less than 50% women are coaching girls and women's sports. So the NCAA collegiate levels, divisions 1, 2, and 3, the average is roughly 41% women head coaches of women's teams. At the youth and high school level, we don't even have really good data, but we know it's somewhere less than 25-ish% women coaching young girls. And when you look at the opportunities for women to coach young boys and men, 6%. And so we're really on a mission to recruit, advance, and retain more women in this critical profession. And it matters for a number of reasons, but we also know by having more female leadership in coaching roles, we're going to be able to not only get, but keep more young girls in sport. You've probably heard the statistic that girls by age 14 are dropping out of sport at twice the rate of young boys. And I really believe, and we know the data says, if they have female role models as coaches, there's more of a likelihood they'll stay in. So that's a little bit about our special organization, and really, really proud of the strides that we're making. So thank you. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, I mean, Josh, I don't want to speak for you, but I know I personally have had so many impactful female coaches. I can think of one specifically. I was a goalkeeper, and it's a very individualized position in soccer. And I had a goalkeeper coach my whole life growing up, and just again, like bringing back to what you're saying at the top, you think of all the lessons that you were taught from those coaches at such a young age that me at 25, I'm now still thinking about that I learned when I was like 13. The impact of a coach should not be overstated, and giving them the resources and the coaching and the development, I think is so, so important, because you're touching the lives of so many young people and really impacting how they grow up and how they see the world and how they interact with others. It's that and teaching are, I think, two of the most impactful careers you could have. Truly.
Yeah. Well said. I'll tell you what, Maggie, you've got a very promising career doing this. I know you're headed off to do your master's work at Syracuse, and you are good, my friend.
Oh, thank you.
Well said.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
How to tell her we're hyping her up before she gets over there.
That's right.
I appreciate that.
They're getting a good one.
I know we just kind of talked about the shifting landscape in the NCAA, but looking at WeCoach's future, how do those two things work together? Do you see the changing landscape impacting what you're doing? Are you changing the way you go about things in the organization?
Yeah, something I've learned is, as there are challenges within, let's just say, college sports, the NCAA and some of the legal attacks that they've had to face, the trickle-down effect is then their conferences, their institutions are cutting budgets. And sadly, although I don't agree with this, one of the first things to get cut from budgets are professional development opportunities. So memberships for coaches to their coaches association, memberships to organizations like ours, WeCoach, and we're fortunate. We've got, a number of supporting members across every level of sport. But when budgets are being cut, that's usually one of the first that's cut out of the budget. And so we've had to really think about creatively, how do we shift our model and do we continue long-term? Now, we're not there right now, but long-term, are we going to be relying on membership dues? And with the movement for women in sport right now, surely there's national brands and partners and foundations that want to support the women in our community and advance our mission. And so we've really looked at how can we get more of our partners and grant providers involved with providing memberships to our women coaches so that they're not having to either pay out of their pocket, we're not having to ask their institution or their conference to fund it. And again, we're not there yet, but we're starting to see partners take interest in doing some large group memberships, whether it be for an entire school district, whether it be for a conference or just a subset of a community. And so we're really grateful for that. But that's something that we're having to evaluate because these challenges, the trickle-down effect as it does, it'll impact us. And, we're growing, but we're still a small but mighty nonprofit. So these resources are critical for our operations and to continue to increase the programming that we're offering for the women in coaching.
Yeah, I think that's so impactful. And I mean, the funding is what drives all of it. I did notice, I don't know if you guys still do it, but you have a sponsor with Huddle for your podcast.
Yeah, Huddle is
that
one of our
still ongoing?
greatest partners. Yes. And we've done some really cool initiatives with Huddle. When I first started at WeCoach, we had been doing with them our Breakthrough Summit. My last year, we brought it out to Omaha, Nebraska in 2022 at the Volleyball Coaches Convention, AVCA Convention. And then we hosted a podcast about time last year with them. And so we're working on some new big ideas, but they're an incredible partner. And what's really cool about Huddle, they have really a passion for impacting women coaches. And one of the initiatives that we've partnered with them on is they provide scholarships for coaches to participate in not only our Youth and High School Women Coaches Academy, but also tuition scholarships for our collegiate Women Coaches Academies every year. And some of them, they've asked us to award to women from underserved and underrepresented communities. And so really, really grateful for their leadership and how they're modeling in their world of tech and video technology. They've been an incredible supporter for our organization.
That's so great.
Listening to you talk about the work that you guys are doing, one of the things I think I'm interested in is just the ways that you are amplifying the work that you do. And how do you guys kind of connect with female coaches, with women that are looking to get into coaching, et cetera? So that can be from kind of the grassroots level, like you said, youth, high school, middle school, et cetera. What kind of things are you guys doing in those spaces to get that information out?
Thanks for asking. One of the most unique things that coaches say all the time, sometimes we get caught up, if we're a coach of tennis, we hang out with all our tennis coaches and we're really not always exposed to coaches from other sports and other levels, which makes us really unique. But we like to say, and we've really grown our programming since I arrived 3 years ago, to try to meet coaches where they are in every step of their career journey. We launched, for example, a new We Aspire program for aspiring women coaches to help set them on the path and give them the tools, the knowledge of what they need to know to go out and get that first coaching job. So that's part of our recruitment efforts is We Aspire. But we also have We Elevate. We're trying to get more assistant and associate head coaches into head coaching roles. And our We Elevate program talks with our coaches about if they are at a place in their career where they're looking for that increased leadership opportunity, how do they go out and get that next or their first head coaching job? A big initiative we're focused on, 2 of them, moms in coaching. That's one of the biggest reasons we're hearing women are dropping out of coaching, late 20s, early 30s. And that's one of the biggest reasons why women might be still figured out what they want to do with their careers, but they're starting relationships. They're maybe getting married, maybe starting a family. And once they become moms, we want to make sure they know they've got the support to not only be a really great mom at home for the little ones, but really a phenomenal coach to the athletes that they're leading. So moms in coaching is a huge initiative, but we also know the numbers are really concerning of women of color coaching. And so we have a We Amplify program that we offer, and we're doing some research right now with the Tucker Center for Research on Girls and Women in Sport that's going to focus on providing sport leaders with best practices for how they best support their women of color on their campuses. And we know if we can not only recruit more, but keep them in the game, those overall stagnant averages of women in coaching are going to increase at a much faster rate by focusing on some of these initiatives.
That's amazing. And I love that you talked about the platforms that you guys are using too, right? And I want to give you the opportunity before we kind of wrap up, if there are any other platforms or clinics or things that you guys are currently doing or looking to implement in the next couple of years to just be able to shout those out. And then I guess with that, the final question from us would just be, if we look 5 years from now, for you, for WeCoach, what does success look like?
Yeah, great questions. I'll say this, one of the new initiatives on the horizon is we're focusing on trying to bring more in-person programming as well. We do both a nice collection of virtual and in-person, but one of the ideas is on the recruitment side to really work on identifying earlier women that want to coach. And maybe it's even when they're in high school, even that we try to tap these women and help them catch a vision for their careers. And so we're discussing with some partners as we speak, See Her, Be Her clinics that are going to help build that pipeline of diverse future leaders of sport. So we're really excited with that work underway. And as far as, long-term, just what success looks like, we want to continue to be able to demonstrate that our efforts are working to not only move those overall numbers, but to help keep these women in sport. And so we're continually looking at and trying to generate data to show the effectiveness of our different programs, like our academies, for example. We know that over 80% of those women that have come through our academies are still coaching, and that's helping to keep these women in the game. And so we want to continue to build upon that progress and that success and see these overall numbers continue to climb.
I'm so impressed just sitting here and listening, and it's incredible. But just Vanessa, we want to thank you again so much for joining, and really just thank you for the amazing work that you're doing, that you've done for student athletes, for all of these women that are looking to get into coaching, that are in coaching currently, and the work just overall that WeCoach is doing. It's incredible. Being candid, I don't know that I knew too much about this organization beforehand. Obviously, learning about you and getting to do some research has been amazing, but getting to hear you talk about what you're doing has been just fulfilling, and it's important. And as Maggie stated earlier, she didn't want to speak for me, but you can. I haven't had any female coaches in my athletics career, but I've had so many great female leaders. And, as we've talked about, consider them coaches as well, and coaches in life and coaches in my professional career, et cetera. So just amplifying that and putting them in positions to lead and to be successful is something that's important to myself, and getting an opportunity to talk to you, excuse me, I feel like I'm choking up, but it's been special. So truly thank you for joining us and for sharing all of this.
Thank you for saying that. It's a privilege, and really appreciate the opportunity to join you both today. Thank you, and keep leading.
Thank you so much, Vanessa.